Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode, and this is very important because today is International Water Day, and we will discuss on climate change and water. Water is very important, even though even Malaysia, India, and many other countries has challenges for water solutions. We are working with India Rotary clubs, and we are supporting their initiative. Already we trained around 3,000 200 students, as well as we are trying to help to develop some practical projects. So we have our expert panelists from around the world. We have world famous speaker Mr. Rush. Thank you, Mr. Tripath. I hear a lot about you from Mr. Donald, so thank you for joining today's session. We have our other speakers, Mr. Marshall, Mr. Donalds, Mr. David Schumachers, and Mr. Mark Sabin. First, I want to give chance, Mr. Tripath, what you want to discuss about climate change and water.
Well, climate change is definitely on the radar for most planners and policymakers, and we're seeing the effects of it all around us, over and above what's happening with COVID. Africa in particular has significant challenges in not only in the change of weather patterns, but also their socio economic situation. And yes, so with that, I'm happy to hear what other people are saying and see what information I can bring, data points I can bring to the table for other people considering climate change, so they can help to increase the knowledge that we have around us.
Thank you. Mr. Rush, what you want to add for today's discussion?
Well, I'm always interested to talk about water. I spent a good part of my career working with that, and I think um, it's extremely important to get this message out. So thank you, Sharif.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall.
Yeah, hi, Sharif. Thanks everybody for joining on this. It's a good day to discuss water. And right now, on February 28th, the IPCC came out with its heavy report on the status of the world and the increase in temperature around the world. And there are infographics that show what is actually happening in the world. I have on my LinkedIn account for Advanced Resilient Technology. It shows an infographic that from 1880 to 2021, the increase in temperature on the Earth. And one of the things that people don't always necessarily equate is what happens to water and how does water affected by this increase in temperature. It's not the same thing all over the world. It's different from place to place. But basically, one of the significant decreases in water and evaporation of water has been seen between the border of Pakistan and India. There was a huge body of water there. It's no longer there. It was there as long as ago, I believe, as 2015. It's now totally evaporated. It's put at risk many people's lives, their ability to farm, their ability to grow plants and crops to feed the world. And now that we have another crisis on our hands, man-made, in Europe, it's going to affect world catastrophe in feeding Africa, in feeding Egypt, and feeding other parts of the world. And so I think water is going to play a key role here. The bad news obviously is what I just described. The good news is there's a way to deal with it. We believe that there's an opportunity to clean water because a lot of water is polluted, and there's a lot, and a lot of it is man-made. But we have the ability to clean up water that is both man-made and just natural polluted water. So in that regard, I encourage everybody to participate in this forum and also join with the World Talent Economy Forum in their programs that they're educating, as Sharif noted at the top of the show, 3,000 people in India plus and other people around the world.
Thank you, Mr. Donald.
Well, I wanted to leverage off of what others have been saying. I think that important to realize that in India, another problem that they're having is a lot of their water comes from melting glaciers in the Himalayas, which is all over the world. Glaciers are starting to disappear. We have the same problem in California. A lot of our water comes from snow, which in the Sierras, which melts during the spring and summer and basically is a reservoir of water for us that as it heats up in the spring and summer, the snow melts and then creates rivers for us. But glaciers are melting everywhere, all over the world, because of global warming. And so basically the water that's been feeding the rivers, especially the Ganga and others, Ganges, is starting to fade out. So we're really at a point where what we need is mitigation. It's kind of too late to stop some of this stuff. We need to figure out what we're going to do about it. And given that, I think it's just amazing that we have Trippett here. He was here. I hope he comes back, because I'd love to see some of the projects that he's actually doing, because I know he's actively involved in working on projects like this. So I'd really be interested to see some examples of it from him.
Thank you. Mr. David Schumacher.
Yeah, hello, Sharif and everyone. Good to be here on this special day talking about water and clean and what we can do about it. So that's where I want to come from. As many of you know, I'm involved with the Transhumanist Party, and core ideal number 3 from the Transhumanist Party is the Transhumanist Party supports the use of science and technology and rational discourse to reduce and eliminate various existential risks to the human species. Many times people, when they think of existential risks, think of what's going on in Europe, and clearly something like that can be true, but climate change and the effects that come from that also play into this as well. So thank you, Donald, for mentioning about glacial issues as far as, and there are many effects from climate change that directly affect water, such as evaporation, but also storms that are more intense because of global warming, stir up sediment, and that is a problem. But another big problem with increased temperature is algae growth, and that too is impacting water. But I'm sure there's others that will have more to say about the fundamental causes. What I want to really talk about is what we can do about it, and we started down that road a little bit. I took the liberty of going out and looking around to see what people are doing about this. And my hometown up in the state of Oregon, a suburb of Portland, which has grown into a good-sized community in itself called Gresham, they have developed a way of conserving and recovering energy that's it's not unique. It's actually starting to spread, and I'm happy to see that too. So their wastewater treatment plant, they have the first one in the Northwest that is using recovery of biogas and using ground-mounted solar arrays. And this wastewater treatment plant actually produces more energy than it consumes in the year. It's a net zero energy producer, cleaning water for the area. There are other places like in Syracuse, in the state of New York. They have a stormwater management system that's capturing over 120 million gallons of runoff of water each year. This is going on right now. In Texas, We have Wichita Falls and a neighboring community are building and using one of the first two potable reuse facilities. They're using multi-barrier technology and they're using very intense monitoring. We have other places, such as in Colorado, where they're using microbes to clean organic contaminants and salts from the water that's used in fracking. And fracking, as you know, is a process for producing oil out of wells that normally would have been dried. So lack of petroenergy is a problem. What's going on in Europe, I think, is showing that to be an even greater problem. And being able to use technologies that solves problems in other areas of technologies, well, that's a good idea too. In Florida, Hurricane Ivan in 2004 severely damaged water treatment facilities in that area. And when they rebuilt, that technology now cleans 22.5 million gallons of water per day, and it's more resilient. It can stand a Hurricane 5 temperature. And wisely, they relocated those water treatment plants to higher ground, making them more resilient for rising sea levels. But it's not just big municipal areas that are doing this. Entrepreneurs are incented. For example, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have challenged universities to design toilets that process human waste without water, without piped water, without sewers, and without electrical connections. And on top of that, capture useful resources in the process. So far, they've granted 16 different awards to different universities for that project. But individual entrepreneurs and innovators are in this fight as well. There's a California-based company called Ketos, Ketos, and their CEO is from Mumbai, India. That's where he grew up. And scarce water, scarce clean drinking water was a big problem. His company is developing sensors and analytical tools that are sold to cities' water supply systems, and they're used to detect leaks so that they can be easily repaired and you don't have those vampire leaks that you have in a lot of holding pipe systems. And they can be used to alert people to contaminants in the system. Outside the US, other things that help power production, which has an effect on water, there's a Ghana-based entrepreneur, and she has developed briquettes that are made out of bamboo. What I like about this is that the bamboo briquettes burn longer, they produce more heat than the regular charcoal briquettes, and they're smokeless because they have a lot of indoor cooking fires and so forth in that part of the world. The U.S. Department of Energy has come up with a prize, their Water Power Technology Office, where they're offering $3.3 million. Lost my place, sorry. Here we go. They're offering $3.3 million to develop or to incentivize a group of entrepreneurs for innovation to create small cellular cost competitive desalinization units. So essentially smaller, more portable desalinization units, and they're powered by the motion of ocean waves. So these would be good for use in areas that are remote and perhaps even in disaster relief areas. Now, behind me, the picture behind me is a picture of Hoover Dam. And on one side of Hoover Dam is the state of Nevada, and on the other side is the state of Arizona. And that's the Colorado River that is backed up into a reservoir called Lake Mead. And the reason I put that picture up there is that white ring next to the water is what we locals call bathtub ring. That bathtub ring shows the amount of water that's been lost over the last few decades out of this. There's a drought that's been going on for more than a decade here in the desert Southwest in the United States. The Colorado River feeds fresh water to many states, including Nevada, Arizona, and California is also a big one. And if we use more water than we can trap, this is what happens. So here in my home state of Arizona, there's a company called Zero Mass Water that's developed a technology to literally pull water out of the air. The moisture in the air can be converted to drinking water systems, and it's powered by solar. One of these units, if I was to show you a picture, looks like a solar panel, but the middle section is the part that traps the water that's in the air and then can pipe it into the house. It doesn't require piping between buildings, so it completely stands up. So once again, it's good for remote areas. It's good for disaster areas. And right now, it's not a dream. It's in use in over 30 countries and has been doing so for about 5-6 years now. So what I want to say is that innovation, entrepreneurship, which I think many in the audience here, Sharif, are quite interested in, there is a place for them in being able to help us offset the effects of climate change and the effects that has on water. And I hope that this provided a little inspiration for that. Thank you, Sharif.
Thank you, Mr. David Schumacher. Thank you all of the speakers joining today's sessions. And I want to share good news. We have very, very special guest, Mr. Iskandar. He is from YMM Corporation. I already shared in Malaysia, one of the largest NGO mapping YMM. They are joining with World Talent Economy Forum. They are supporting more than 3,000 mosques, and it's around 7 million people they are supporting with their food and safety, with their sustainable projects. So Mr. Iskandar actually one of the initiator of this project. He's the CEO of YMM. So I will listen many interesting points from Mr. Iskandar's. We have other speakers. Actually, I want to give them chance. First, I want to give chance, Madam Kimberly. Mr. Iskandar, I'm coming to you. I know you have a presentation. You can share with our audience.
Good evening. It's a good day. I'm actually Irish. I immigrated to Malaysia, and we are working on sustainable projects, including fertilizer from food waste. It is something that we have been working on for a few years with Dr. Katarina Faulkner from Cambridge University in UK. We're actually entering into a project to provide affordable food for all, affordable vegetables for all, I will say. We have looked at how the supply chain is here in Malaysia, and the poor people, which there is quite a significant amount, have really suffered since COVID-19. So that is the reason that we are engaging with some of the mosques, where they will afford us low-cost units where we can sell the vegetables from. We will produce them on our farms, small-scale farms in each state, and the vegetables will be 30% less than in the shops. And plus, we are going for regenerative farming. We're not going for traditional farming with pesticides. I think it's a very good project because it takes in many of the SDGs, your environment, the well-being of poor people. There's so many different factors involved in it. One of the ones that are interesting is that growing vegetables with pesticide is killing us softly. Most people don't understand it, but actually the long-term use of the pesticides have to have a really negative effect on our health. And I am someone with diabetes, kidney disease. So I am really concerned about my own health as well. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I would like to maybe chat with other individuals in another time. But thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. And I'm not really prepared tonight. I should have had a shirt or a tie on. I apologize for my dress.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Iskandar. Actually, World Talent Economy Forums, regularly I share that we are engaging with millions of people in the developing nations, in Malaysia, in Singapore, in India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, Indonesia, many countries, millions of people we are engaging. And we are not only involved with these dialogues, we are taking action in the real life. So Mr. Iskandar actually very inspirational leaders for Malaysia. He is from Ireland, but he come to Malaysia and solving real problem. Madam Kimberly. So Madam Kim, so what you want to add for today's discussion?
Oh, good day, good morning, good evening, everyone. What an honor it is to be speaking on the World Forum. Sharif, thank you so much for holding these brilliant-minded conversations. All of the information that we can gather every day and learn about Earth is just going to benefit us even more. But what I want to say is something that I have been saying recently. Well, before I do that, I actually went to a forum a week and a half ago, CERA Week, the world leaders for gas, oil, energy, and one of the major conversations for a whole week, which, by the way, we get together from 7 a.m. till about 9 p.m. every day to talk for 5 days. It was just everyone's concerned about this climate issue. But what I have to always say is Earth, nature itself, will continue without man. Actually, would do better off without man. We create the problems and the toxins. And just like anything in nature, when nature decides something is too much of a danger, they will do whatever is necessary to rid itself of that danger. We don't want to be getting rid of. Okay. So I think what we have failed to do is truly take a look at what makes nature exist. Okay. We utilize all of these resources in nature to make our lives what we believe to be better off. Okay. Solar, I am a big fan of, so I'm a scientist. I tinker with solar, heat collectors, but I keep trying to venture into everything that is as natural as possible without utilizing a lot of resources that take away from nature, like gas. Fracking is horrific. It's not just the most dangerous job in the world for humans, it's the most dangerous thing to Earth. I mean, think about it. We're taking something out of Earth, trying to replace it, but we're drilling into it, destroying it. I'm sure Earth doesn't like it. I mean, how would you like it if somebody drilled into you? So think about these things. Nature, think about what really makes nature exist, healthy. I mean, the coral reefs were dying at a pace that were faster than what it could recreate itself. And, you know, there's an argument about where our oxygen comes from. But you know what? If we destroy every element that creates our oxygen, we're really not going to exist. Okay. So we need to take a look at what makes nature healthy and let nature heal itself, because nature does heal itself. When there's a forest fire and the rain comes, the seeds redevelop and regrow, right? And the forest rebuild. They might not be the same that they were before, but nothing is after you destroyed it. But it comes back. Does it come back stronger? I don't know. Does it come back healthier? I don't know, but I know that nature rebuilds itself. So what we need to do is find ways to allow nature to rebuild Earth. Okay. We need to step back. Kind of like during COVID. Did you see how healthy the climate got when we all had to stay put? No driving, no flying, no pushing our elements to their extreme. Okay. Nature was healing itself. India got to see the mountains. All right. That's all we talked about was how clean everything was. But the minute, and someone told me this was going to happen, the minute we could get back to what we consider our normal lives, none of that will matter. It will go away. So think about these things. Think about how does nature truly exist, and how can we collaborate with nature to continue that true existence? All right. So, like, if we need batteries for solar, that resource comes from the earth, right? We have to take it. But is there a way to tap into the energy of earth without doing that? Is there a way to store and contain energy without doing that? And I think there is. I think we just need to go beyond the borders and boundaries of what our science is today and find better and greater things. And I think we can. The problem is we get caught in this loop of what man defined as science and is, and we forget to go beyond that. Okay, we say this is what it is, and we go, okay, we believe that, and we just stay in that box. We need to start going out of the box. We need to start letting nature dictate who we are. We need to stop dictating nature. And I'm not a purist, guys. Okay, I am a scientist. I'm a computer engineer. But these are things that I have learned in my life experiences and sitting down and talking with people, but also sitting back and watching how nature just regrows and redevelops. The coral reefs are learning to regrow. Scientists are learning to help it grow faster. But we have to do our job. We have to do our due diligence and what should be expected of us. And we need to think about when you throw trash down on the ground, reuse things, right? Make a repurpose of everything you have. Don't just throw it away into the dump. The dumpsters are getting bigger than our mountains. That's not good. The ocean is full of so much junk that the fish are it's growing in them. We need to rethink how we do things. But man is the danger to the climate. Man is danger. We are not the dog, not the deer, not the birds or the fish. We need to repurpose ourselves. And you know, Sharif, that's pretty much, no matter what we invest in technology, all that ends up doing is creating more havoc to the earth. And man needs to learn to get along with each other, period. This war and all of this stuff, we need to unite. We need to unite and work together in peace. And I know that sounds like, you know, the hippie kind of things, or, you know, but it's true. Everything that we have learned from the time we were born, we just need to evolve back into that. Everything back to a seed. What makes that seed grow? You know, certainly not solar, but certainly sun. Okay. Can we grab the energy from the sun and utilize it when we need it without having to use batteries? Can we take energy from an orange? I've seen kids do this. Plug their cell phone adapter into it and charge their phone. I've seen kids do this. So is there ways that we can tap into the energy without destroying the earth? And I think we need to focus more on that than gas, oil, solar, all, you know. I think we can. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Madam Kim. Professor Rob, what you want to add for climate change?
Sure. Well, the United Nations certainly recently came out and indicated that we were sleepwalking to climate change disaster, and that's true. And the war in the Ukraine is certainly making things worse as a result of the loss of Russian oil. Germany, the United States, and other countries have increased oil production to make up for the shortfall. And of course, once you increase oil production, it's pretty hard to turn that tap back off. So we're going in the wrong direction at the moment. This takes us to perhaps a better strategy than trying to reverse climate change, because it just doesn't look like the countries are willing to do the work necessary to make that happen. And that means you have to mitigate. And mitigation means you've got to look to other ways to solve underlying problems. And right now we're talking about water shortages, which is really having to do with the massive shift in the world's ecosystem, which of course is causing significant problems. We've got in South and Central America, you've got farms that are no longer viable. You've got folks migrating north in large numbers, creating immigration problems for a variety of countries, including our own. And it's just getting worse. California and Oregon, where I am, are in historical droughts. Where other parts of the country are having recurring flooding events. Parts of the country have too much water, other parts have way too little. You would think with the climate getting warmer and evaporation increasing, we would actually be drenched in water. So it's and certainly some of the models suggested that, but that's not the case. And that means that for the areas that are getting excess water, they've got to increase their flood control. They probably need to rethink how they design and specify homes, buildings, and factories. In California, after the major earthquakes decades ago, building requirements changed dramatically to allow or require buildings and homes to at least stand up to a Category 7 earthquake. Though we're now talking about even higher category earthquakes that would cause disasters. That you can do the same thing with building requirements against flooding. And then when it comes to water, it's interesting that the two states, Oregon and California, that I mentioned that are under drought, both have the ocean on one of their borders, and certainly the potential for desalinization is there. Though the problem with desalinization is very energy intensive. And so if we're talking about energy creating a climate problem, using fossil fuels to fuel desalinization is solving one problem while making the problem you're trying to solve worse over time. Fortunately, the technology has now moved to alternative energy sources, and using solar power in particular to power desalinization plants is proven viable. And so that can be done, but probably needs to be done at scale so you don't have these droughts. Other areas that need to be focused on, farming is one of the greatest users of water. And the worst, of course, is when you do flood irrigation, which is highly wasteful through evaporation. It really applies water in all the places you don't. Water is going to water the weeds as well as the plants that you want, and then you've got to put on pesticides, which in turn go back and contaminate the water. So using drip systems, even some certain types of sprinkler systems are better than flood and can reduce the use of water in farming, and hopefully provide more clean water left over for the rest of us to use. Another area for producing water that's showing promise, particularly in humid areas, is water from air projects. Those are available at home level, though I've looked at that a couple times myself, and I just don't think it's all that practical. But in terms of scale, if it can be scaled up, water from air is inherently cleaner than water from the ground, less pollutants. And while I would agree that we shouldn't be putting pollutants in the water in the first place, the fact of the matter, the pollutants are already there, and these large landfills are becoming a pollution source, particularly given the fact we've started to pump an awful lot of lithium-ion batteries into them, which are not only causing fire hazards in the landfills, but lithium is a very toxic substance, and you don't want that floating around any place near your water. Yet when it rains, of course, the water flows through the landfills and flows into the aquifers, and has to be polluting it to a certain level, which means you have to purify the water coming back out. But you can pull the water from the air. That is a natural pure resource. And again, if we can do that at scale, at least we can cover our drinking and personal water needs as that scales up. At the end of the day, climate change is real. It is my belief it's gone too far too fast, and we're doing too little to fix the problem. And so now we must focus our resources on mitigation to make sure that our people are safe and that we have drinking water that we need when we need it. Running out of that stuff, I mean, having a bunch of people dying at scale would certainly have a positive impact on climate change, but it's not the direction I think we should head. And we'd have a whole bunch of social, economic issues, not to mention outright revolt as that gets to scale. And so the government need to ramp up and recognize that they're not doing enough for climate change and start moving a lot of their efforts into mitigation. Otherwise, you'll get the combined problem of the climate change events and starving, thirsty people that want to take out the government. So it is a survival path that we need to be on right now. We've waited too long to recognize this. And at the very least, if you wanted to be serious about mitigating climate change, you should get the petrochemical industry out of control of governments and get the government back serving the people, which of course is not. I can't get over the fact that the United States still subsidizes petrochemical market, which is about as counter-strategic as we can get. But that's the reality we live in, and often we have to deal with that reality, which makes mitigation a much faster path to at least addressing the major problems we currently have in keeping people fed and hydrated, and perhaps reducing the massive migrations of people that are devastating large parts of the world at the moment.
Thank you, Professor Rob. Mr. Mark Sabin, what do you want to add for climate change?
Thank you, Sharif. Well, it's a great conversation that we're having, and there's kind of the two aspects of it. One is the presentation of the problems, which I think all the panelists here will agree to a certain extent on what the problems are and the size and impact of what the problems are. I think as David Schumacher was talking about, there are a lot of entrepreneurs. I fall into the class of entrepreneurs that are working on solutions to try to resolve and change what's happening. So I think there's a great need for support of that. There are some opportunities that are now currently being promoted in the financial communities to actually support the entrepreneurs. There are many different kinds of events that are happening and people that are taking part of it that is really important, because as we're seeing the diminishment of the resources of water, the diminishment of the resources that have been currently used for purposes of energy, and of course there are all the consequences that we're now facing because we have used fossil fuels to the extent we have, that we have been a consumer generating economy where we're using massive amounts of waste. What Rob was talking about, the fact that we have landfills that are now leaching into the water. So we have multiple levels of all that is happening with the diminishment of water and the problems that we're having. What we really need to focus on, and I think what the focus on here in this conversation and in the world economy and bringing the talent forward, which is I think what the motivation here is to bring these opportunities forward to be able to address the issues. And I think there are some opportunities now available to do cleaning of what's happening in the environment, using natural solutions, what Kim was talking about, there are a lot of natural solutions, or what we see is a lot of hybrid solutions where you're combining technologies that can bring greater, say, oxygen into water, or to be able to convert the waste into materials that can actually then filter and clean the water and to make the differences that we're needing to have happen. So I think there are a lot of opportunities here. And it really is a combined effort, and all the people on this panel are part of that effort to actually turn this around and mitigate the problems that we're facing with the climate and with the diminishment of water resources worldwide.
Thank you, Mr. Marsabin. We have real-time entrepreneurs, those who are actually solving millions of people problem. First, I want to give chance Mr. Iskandar. From Malaysia, if you want to share your views about, you are working with food security and water. So if you just focus on that area, what is the real problems and how the global community can work together for particular project?
I think my personal feeling is that there's two major problems: chemical fertilizer and pesticides. They're polluting our rivers, and the issue is that they've been using excessive amounts of chemical fertilizer for so many years. It's destroyed the soil. Now it's our duty to replenish the soil again. One of our projects is turning food waste into a soil amendment, and we're enhancing it using bokashi treatment. We're mixing carbons from green waste that would normally go to landfill. So with the combination, I think the time is now, because chemical fertilizers, the prices they've become too expensive for a normal farmer. So it gives our project an opportunity to turn them back to using organic fertilizers, soil enhancement. This will help our rivers. It will help our seas. And I think that the government should be promoting and really banning all pesticides, or at least reduce them by, I don't know what kind of a figure we could use, but personally, I'd like to see them banned completely. I believe that we have enough of biotechnology. You have biostimulants, biopesticides we can use, which will improve the quality of the food we're eating. We're finding that a lot of vegetables they're lacking nutrition. So this is something we have been studying, and to reduce if we can get the farmers to turn back to organic fertilizer, we will have a significant effect on climate change. The amount of CO2, we're taking waste that would go to landfill, putting it back into the soil. Now, we're talking commercial waste, obviously not household waste, but it is just a very large amount. About 1,500 ton of commercial food waste goes to landfill in Kuala Lumpur every day, or the landfills surrounding Kuala Lumpur. I'm willing to take any questions. This is my first time on the forum, so I'm a little bit lost,
Okay.
I suppose.
Okay, no problem. Mr. Tripa, as you are expert in water solutions, there is a question from our audience, Onika Shams. What strategies help developing nations to improve their drinking water? I believe that Malaysia also have water-related problem. So,
Yes.
so Mr. Tripa.
Absolutely. That's a fantastic question, and it brings together a whole gambit of problems and issues we can discuss that also impact climate change. I think the developing countries have to have scalability, from going from the rural areas to industrialization. There's a lot of change taking place. There's populations migrating from rural to urban. You've got industrialization taking place, and superimpose that with poverty alleviation, gender enablement, and the sustainability, resilience, and redundancy required to get security for water. Now, water is used in many ways. It's used in homes, it's used in agriculture, it's used in industry. So bundling all that together and say, water security can get a bit mind-boggling. So if we separate those out, say, okay, look, separate out water for the home, separate out water for agriculture, and separate out water for industry, you have to look at it holistically. Where did it go after it's used? How can we economize? How can we make best use of our water resource so that the dollar goes a long way? And the most fundamental part of it is, how do we fund it? How do we make it financially sustainable as well as environmentally sustainable? So these are challenges that governments and societies are facing all the time. And unfortunately, the squeaky wheel, the popular stuff, it takes center stage. The folks in the slum, and that kind of stuff. But really, there are solutions, some of which are conventional, and some of which can certainly use new technology and more enlightened approaches. So the question being, what strategies help developing countries develop the water supply? So I'll answer that sort of shortly, and then we can, if there's questions, I can then dive in deeper on those things that are of interest. So the first one, of course, is it has to be financially sustainable as well as environmentally sustainable. So the Millennium Challenge, the United Nations have put together a very, very good toolkit for that. And anybody who wants to get into that using the toolkit is going to come out, in a good way, because these years of experience have gone into putting this together. So I can take an anecdote, for example. You have in the 21st century now, many developing countries have cities which have had legacy water supplies. Their water resources, their water sources have been overdeveloped and now being degraded through water catchment being degraded. Then it comes into the city and it goes into pipes that are leaking, and it then goes into a sewer which discharges without treatment. And so how do we bring it all together? And here we can use new technologies to do that. For example, with the internet, people are using micropayments to pay for things. And having water operators that can leverage that collection of the revenues and having oversight and regulation and feedback from customers and enabling the water authority to manage entrepreneurs to look after these assets, that's one thing. Then on top of that, you've got new strategies and new, more effective water treatment operations, facilities. Those can be leveraged. So there's many, many things. And the answer to that question is, what can help? Plug into the United Nations toolkits. They are well thought out, they scale, and they are able to bring in all these moving parts. So in a nutshell, that's where I would stop. But I'd love to go back in there and delve deeper into specific interest points.
Can I share something real quick?
Yeah, sure.
So
Now you're
I came upon this discovery this year. It has just totally mind boggled me. And I'm going to do a little more research into it. But we know that in nature, there are a lot of elements that actually can purify water, such as lavender, right? Pesticides. One of the best pesticides I ever found, marigolds. I plant marigolds all along my vegetable beds, and it keeps majority of the pest out. I've yet to have to use a pesticide, a powder or a spray to keep the pest away. So, I mean, I want to say the alternatives have been there. Nature creates them. But this, I don't know if you guys can see it, okay, is a very interesting plant. It was given to me as a gift, as a stick. It's called the Confederate Rose here in the South. It's a hibiscus or hibiscus known everywhere else. But what I've learned about it is fascinating. I travel a lot and I'm gone for weeks on end. And whenever you do anything with water in it, especially like flowers or plants, you have to change the water consistently to keep it from getting that slimy, stinky, whatever. I have yet to change this water since December 5th. It has never become stinky, slimy, nasty, anything. Whenever I get a bouquet of flowers now, I'll take one of these stems and put it in the vase, and the water never gets that ugly, stagnant smell. This has never got the stagnant smell. It's been stagnant, and it never gets that stagnant. So I think we just need to start stretching our brains a little bit and utilizing the natural resources, because Earth heals Earth's self. We need to help her do that, or him, or Earth. Okay. And I'm learning so much just from little things like this. I mean, literally the water, I keep pouring more water in it, but I've yet to change it. So all of these things that we're talking about exist. and try planting more. Let everyone plant a small garden at home. That rejuvenates oxygen, which what rejuvenates water and moisture. I mean, all of these little things. Plus, we learn to sustain ourselves, learn to feed ourselves. So, I don't understand why we don't grow gardens at school, right? Let each child be responsible for growing certain sections of their school. We've got sports. We use that land for sports and beating each other up and killing each other on the field, but we don't use it to grow food, and we should. Every child in every school should be growing the food they eat in that school every day. It would be healthier. They won't be eating potato chips. They would be learning how to sustain themselves. Okay. So, and at the same time, we're re-engineering the earth to do what? Exactly what earth should do. And plants create oxygen. Oxygen helps create water. All of the stormwater runoff toxins that we have, we created that. Earth didn't create that. Every time you move earth in certain ways and you build it and you drive on it, that stormwater, I know I did research on this for years, fighting overdevelopment. Not development, but just overdevelopment. And these are the things we need to do. Let earth heal herself and help her. Okay. But learn about these things. I mean, this is fabulous. And lavender, it really does work. It really will purify water. And we can do these things. We can. I mean, and we can start learning how to use the sun in other ways. And I am so certain there are other ways to store energy besides, or use stored energy besides batteries. That all of this is engineered to do what? Generate revenue for other people, just like oil and gas. That's why we really never come up with anything else, is because that generates revenue for other people. And that's what we need to start thinking about. But all of the resources to care for us exist. We just need to learn how to use them. And I unfortunately have to run. Please continue this work and these conversations. And thank you so much for including me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Kimberly, for your support for World Talent Economy Forum. And future, we're going to invite you more. Thank you.
Take care,
things that,
everyone.
Thank you.
yeah, one of the things that Tim's bringing up is the idea of a circular economy where you actually take the things that are being processed into the waste stream that are being discarded and actually being able to use those as new resources, reinvigorate them as resources. So the whole idea of a circular economy becomes an essential ingredient to this, to be able to use the natural solutions to provide these kind of answers to what's going on.
Thank you. I have to go for the concluding remarks for today. There are questions from audience that Anika asked, what strategies help developing nations to improve their drinking water? Noor Fazrin, is there any alternative to cleaning the water naturally? Mahdi, he want to know, how does climate change impact water access? Alea, how does water play an important role in regulating climate change? Humaira, uh, uh, thank you for your good comments. I directly want to go for the concluding remarks. When in your concluding remarks, you can add any questions, answer. Professor Rob.
Sure, and thanks for letting me go first because I've got to drop off here in about 4 minutes. So looking at the questions, water and climate change. Water is a heat sink. It is probably our largest heat sink regulating water. If you're not chatting, please mute because your noise is coming through, and I'm trying to talk over the noise. Thank you. So water acts as a heat sink, and so that makes sure that our climate doesn't change even more rapidly than it does. And water can be used effectively, and is used effectively as a cooling agent to transfer heat out of large data centers, for instance. And while we use other material for our home and building air conditioning systems, you could also use water if you needed to for that, since it does do a pretty decent job of both retaining heat and moving heat from one area to another. As far as what you can do for clean water, first is I would argue change your tax revenue system so that you aren't incenting bad behavior and so that you're penalizing it instead, so that companies and industries that pollute are paying a premium for that pollution, and it becomes therefore economically viable for them. Economically more viable for them to fight the pollution. Right now, it's really cheap to dump pollutants into the water, and it's really cheap to dump materials into landfills. And often those activities are subsidized and not mitigated. So changing the behavior of the state so that it promotes the end result that you want becomes very critical. Certainly probably more viable in smaller countries than in larger ones, because here in the U.S. that concept appears to be a bridge too far. So let's see, what else do we have? I guess I'll just leave you with my final comments. The point I wanted to make is, with climate change the way it is and the slow movement towards mitigating it, we're not going to stop it, and that means we need to put into place methods to allow the population to continue until we can eventually reverse climate change. And I do believe eventually we'll reverse it. The industries that are contributing to climate change, in effect, are in slow decline. So eventually we're going to get there, but it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And if governments don't start to aggressively mitigate these problems, they're going to have significant issues with regard to retaining citizens and retaining healthy citizens. There are health aspects to this, migration aspects of this that need to be mitigated. Otherwise, as these things get worse, the government's ability to even rule, let alone mitigate bad behaviors, becomes vastly more limited. We're on the end of a cliff, and maybe it's time to get some safety ropes around our folks and keep them falling off. That's it for me today.
Thank you, Professor Rob, for joining today's session. Mr. Donald, what's your concluding remarks, and you can respond any of the question from audience.
Well, I just want to climate is, because the climate's changing, the access to water is changing, because where water is available is changing, and the consequence of that is that people have to live near water, and so where people are going to live is probably going to be changing, which is a difficult problem. And I think I want to emphasize what Trippett said, which is that it's all well and good to talk about entrepreneurs doing wonderful entrepreneurial things, but we underline it. We have to make sure that everything's financially viable. So if we think of the idea that a certain area needs water because the climate's changed, and they don't really have enough water, there's no real way of doing it, and it's very expensive to provide them with water. It's hard to think about how that can work over a long period of time. If it costs more to provide the water than it's really sustainable. And so I think that's a really interesting question that we're going to have to solve. And I am not a techno optimist like Rob is. I don't believe that we're going to find a technical solution to the climate crisis. I think that like right now, there's a plant in Iceland that removes CO2 from the air. And the problem is when you remove CO2 from the air, it takes energy. And so in Iceland, they can do that because they have so much geothermal energy. They're not using fossil fuels and making more carbon dioxide when they remove the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, so that they can do it. So it's the biggest plant in the world that removes more carbon dioxide from the air than any other plant in the world. And in 1 year, it removes as much carbon dioxide as we produce in 1 second. And so it's the amount, it's inconsequential. And so the like gap between our ability to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and the economic incentive to cut down trees and cut down forests is so high that we just haven't been able to slow it or stop it. And in the end, it's all about like figuring out how to make it be economically viable to be able to do these things. And I don't really completely know the answer to that. So that's why I really want to hear what Trippett has to say, because he's been doing this.
Thank you. Mr. David Schumacher, what's your concluding remarks for today?
Yeah, hi, Sharif. Thanks for bringing together such a diverse panel, lots of different viewpoints, and I think they all bring something to add. What I want to suggest, though, is focusing so much on the problem and not celebrating solutions, I'm thinking is unhelpful. So I'm not saying to ignore the problem. I consider myself an optimist, even a techno-optimist, but that doesn't mean that I can't see the realities of what's going on around. The point is, though, I see that whatever I focus on, that's what continues to increase. So one of my hobbies is riding motorcycles. And one of the things they stress when they're teaching you to ride a motorcycle is if you see an object in the road, don't stare at the object that you want to avoid, stare at the path that you want to take around it. And I think that's what we need to do when it comes to any of these problems, but especially with climate change and water. So that's why today, what I spoke about were municipalities, benefactors, entrepreneurs, innovators, what they're doing to make this better. Sure, we need to let people know that there's a problem out there, but I really think that we need to be celebrating the things that we're doing that were better so that we can magnify those things. Let's inspire young entrepreneurs in Malaysia, India, Bangladesh, across the United States and into Europe to really want to do something to be a social hero, if you will. And I think we can do that at the environmental level. I think we can do that at the entrepreneurial level. I think we can do it in the education system. So that's where I would like to see us focus. And I would encourage you to go out and take a look, young entrepreneurs out there listening to this, to what other entrepreneurs are doing and how they are making life better for themselves and for people around them. And then I think we have something that we can sustain moving forward. Thank you, Sharif.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Mar Sabin, what's your concluding remarks?
Let's just build on what David just said, because I think that if you focus on solutions, that's not ignoring the problem, because the solution has to have the problem before you can have the solution. So I think that one of the things that, in the questions that are asking, like what strategies can help developing nations improve their drinking water? Well, it's being able to convert the things that are creating the problem and turning them into the solution. So one of the things that we have done in the work that we're doing is to be able to take waste and convert it into a filtration medium, or to be able to add oxygen back into the water so that the natural function of restoring the water can actually do that. And to do that in a way, as was also presented, that in a way that actually is financially viable, so that rather than just being a cost center, it actually can be converted into something that generates profit, so that you're creating jobs and other financial opportunities. So all these things go together to be able to bring these solutions which is so important. And there are so many of these, the young entrepreneurs who may be tuning into the broadcast here, who have ideas, who are inventive and creative and looking at what they can do to be able to solve these problems. These are the things we need to support. The projects of agriculture that Iskander is talking about, or that Tripak is talking about, these are the things that we actually need to promote and foster the development of. In a forum like this is one of the ways in which we get that information out and communicate that so that we can bring more people into this solution providing reality that we need to promote. So I want to thank you for hosting this and for keeping this top of mind for people at this important time. Thank you, Sharif.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mark. Mr. Tripat, what's your concluding remarks for today? Can you unmute?
It's brought some light to things. I'd like to say that climate change is going to impact different people in different ways. For example, the folks in the rural areas, particularly rain-fed agriculture, this needs to be looked at and helped in a really meaningful way. Folks are going to be in places where there's going to be more droughts and places where there's going to be more rain. Their livelihoods are going to change from what they traditionally had to do. And so those things have to be brought forward and plans made as to what's going to happen to those areas. In urban areas that are developing fast with industrialization, the full circle pollution, polluter pays, and management of infrastructure assets already in the ground, how they're going to be paid back and looked after. All these need solutions that are ongoing and can be helped by technology. And over and above that, we are going to be facing climatic events which are unprecedented. And so we have to have some resilience, not only just in the supply of water, but in what's going to happen during the floods and during the drought. So policymakers, entrepreneurs, people who want to be proactive with the water sector need to get their thinking hats on and make sure that we can start finding some solutions or getting mitigating strategies in place for the communities that they're in so that they can ride these storms. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tripat. Mr. Raj, what's your concluding remarks for today?
Well, thank you, Sharif. A lot of this is bringing this information, this knowledge, and putting it out there on a global basis, which is what you do. And deep bows to you for that effort. It's a noble effort. There are problems, clearly. We have pollution, which impacts our water and our soil, and it's a product of our modern world. We have climate change, which is a real and present danger. The high Himalaya glaciers are in full retreat. Water is rising East Timor, and other island nations are at risk. And they're scheduled to go underwater, and they have no place to go. So this is a real and present danger. Yet, looking at all of these dire things, we do have solutions. And they're real, and they exist right now. The question is, do we have the ability to sell that idea, to let people know what's going on, and engage those solutions to make a difference? And I think this is a great forum for that opportunity, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. Mr. Iskander, what's your concluding remarks for today?
When it comes to climate change, I have so many things I'd like to say. Firstly, I think the circular economy is the way to go. But I also think sustainability in each country is very, very important to reduce our transport, because transport is one of the biggest polluters. And I think there's so many poor countries that need sustainability and need experts from America, from China, wherever, we can help these people to build our lives and it will actually help us in the long run. It will help the rest of the world in the long run. There's so much poverty out there, and I see that there is so much. Personally, I see that people need to take more responsibility. Every person, not just the scientists, not just the innovators. Every single person needs to look at what they're doing if we want to see our children or their grandchildren having a better life. And that is what got me into the circular economy, into recycling, thinking about my child and what kind of a life he's going to have. I think everybody needs to take responsibility for their own actions. Sorry, listen, thank you so much, guys. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Iskandar. Mr. Marshall, what's your concluding remarks for today?
Well, thank you, Sharif. I think a lot of the people here on this panel and those who had to leave, like Kim, have brought a lot of opportunity to the table. Are you hearing echo on my line, or am I good? I'm good?
Continue.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So my concluding remarks, I'll just leave at three things. One of the biggest water threats to the world was noted by some of the panelists here, especially the concept of using NPK, which is manufactured fertilizer. A lot of it is used in the United States, not just in crops and farms. It's also used on lawns for people to have green grass. It's used so much so that a lot of it goes into what's called the bioswale. That's the water bodies, and the water flows into rivers and lakes and creates what's called harmful algal blooms. These harmful algal blooms then cut off the oxygen in the water, creating devastation for the fish and the other plants in the water. And then you have these toxic algal blooms that rise up to the top of the water body. The good news is we have the ability to solve that. I think Mark talked about the various tools that are out there that people are bringing, and so did Trippett and Iskandar. And I think one of the things that we're seeing right now is there is the opportunity and the money to be able to bring to the table the ability to, as Mark said, create jobs, improve the economy, especially in the developing world. The developed world should be doing this, but they're not, because of the oil and gas parties that are out there that are trying to keep their money flowing at the expense of other people's lives. But in the developing world, we have the opportunity to take and create what are called vertical farms, which use 25% less water to grow crops and less land, but at the same time also have the ability to solve these harmful algal blooms by taking what we call biochar. I believe that that's being used in Malaysia as a soil amendment, but you can use biochars, different chars from different feedstock, to turn that waste. It's waste that you're using. You're not using something new. You can take the waste, convert it into a carbon filtration media, filter out a lot of the toxins in the water, and then you put in what we call the ultra nano bubble generator, that where the oxygen comes from the bottom up and is ultra nano. It's really small bubbles. They're hard to see as a single bubble, but you can see them as they operate. Then it uses the bacteria that's left over in the water to clean the water, and then there's another tool that's a antimicrobial through a sand filter, and there's one here in the United States that's EPA rated called EnviroProtect, that takes the water and can even make it potable, so people can actually drink the water. So on the note of water, I would just say those are solutions that are real here and now and need to be deployed. There are funds out there that are doing it, and we would like to pursue that with all the people on this panel and other people out there. It is doable. The UN has funds. The EU climate bond has funds. There's a lot of money out there. The last thing I'll note on my wrap up here, Sharif, is that the framework to deal with all this, it exists. It's already existed. It's been created by the United Nations. It's called the Sustainability Development Goals. There are 17 of them. They include everything from lifting people out of poverty, creating gender equity, to also cleaning up a lot of the pollution that's in the world. It's all based on sustainability, and it's there. We have the rules of the road. We just got to get everybody to work together to make that happen. And again, thank you, Sharif, for hosting this. And I urge everyone out there to support Sharif and his World Talent Economy Forum, to join in forums like this around the world and join with Sharif to make a difference and educate people. And congratulations, Sharif, on getting those people in India educated, those 3,000 plus people. We want to see more of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. I'm really happy that how I'm getting support. Today we cross around 510 episodes and we get a lot of support. People from the people like you, we get a lot of local support from developing world, from developed worlds, from around the world. That is the important thing for World Talent Economy Forum. We believe in people. People actually support our initiative. We always believe that when we do work for people, people actually support any project. So this is our objective. Our objective, we want to develop a better world. We do not want any war. We do not want any hungry peoples. We need only solutions. That's why from industry, from academy, from government, we always bring people together. And these are the people go for the high level of dialogues, and we apply this dialogue some point in research paper, some point in projects, and that is the way of real solutions. And I'm happy that how World Talent Economy Forum growing, but definitely this is people organization. I always say this is not Sharif organization. Those who join, Mr. Donald, David Schumacher, Mr. Mark Sabin, Mr. Tripath, Mr. Raj, Mr. Iskandar, Mr. Marshall, all of our audience, you are the owner of World Talent Economy Forum. Without you, it's a teamwork, it's a team effort. So when we work together, we can change the world. There are experts from like water purification, expert from agriculture, expert from waste management, expert from industrial research, expert from academy. If we work together, we can solve many real-time projects. So that is our objective. We need more of your support. We need more of your contributions. And I can assure you, I do not know what will happen in the business. I'm very honest with you. But I'm sure those who supporting World Talent Economy Forum, you will be part of the history. Maybe after 10 years or 15 years, you can understand what you did through the World Talent Economy Forum. I'm sure millions of people from the developing world, they are joining. When I meet with Mr. Iskandar, I become very inspired because they are doing real projects with mosque, because Malaysia is a Muslim country. We have to go with the mosque. When I discuss about Mr. Tripath projects, I am very happy. Mr. Marshall, very action-oriented. Transhumanist Party, very much science-oriented. Mr. Donald, very helpful. These are the good people. When they work together, I'm sure this world would be more better, and this world can solve many problems together. Thank you, Mr. Donald. Thank you, Mr. David Schumacher, Mr. Mark Sabin, Mr. Tripath, Mr. Iskandar, and Mr. Marshall for your continuous support for World Talent Economy Forum.
It's an honor, Sharif. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharif.
Thank you.
Great.